Now, let's return to another important story this hour. That relates to claims that radioactive materials that could be used to create a dirty bomb may have been stolen from Iraqi authorities. To bring more details to you, let's speak to Chris Hunter now. He's a former bomb disposal officer. Chris, thanks for joining us. Just how likely is it, do you think, because this is the big concern, that ISIL may have managed to get its hands on radioactive material?
Well, I think the fact that a radioactive source has been left effectively unsecured is a major concern, of course. This particular isotope, as they're known, the radioactive chemicals, Iridium-192 is used for treating cancer. It's called a class 2 isotope. It means it's quite a powerful isotope. It's also used for radiographing any impurities in steel, so it's used in the sort of oil and mining industries. Now, it is a concern, of course. We've been told, reportedly that about 10 grams have been stolen, which isn't a significant amount at all when it comes to, potentially making a dirty bomb. But I think what we need to remember, of course, is that while this was stolen reportedly in Basra in southern Iraq, where Daesh don't actually operate, A, it's been left unsecured, but B, Daesh do have possession of huge amounts of infrastructure geographically. They've got, dams, they've got power facilities, power plants, they've got oil facilities, and of course they've got hospitals. And in hospitals you also see radioactive sources, fairly large ones, cesium and other isotopes. So I think the point is they've probably already got radioactive material that they could turn into a dirty bomb. But, this is also a newsworthy story. But crucially, it is very difficult to make a dirty bomb and actually survive when you're in the manufacturing process, which is why we haven't seen many of them throughout the course of history, even though a lot of radioactive material does get stolen or go missing.
Yeah, you mentioned that there is a chance they could have the radioactive material. They have got infrastructure at their disposal, but what about the knowledge required? I mean, just how likely is it that ISIL could actually manufacture its own dirty bombs?
Well, ISIL, Daesh, they do have a very advanced capability when it comes to weapons and especially improvised explosive device manufacture. But with a dirty bomb, although it's one of those threats that, we're very, very concerned about, it frightens the population around the world, it is difficult to manufacture it because effectively it's a controlled radioactive source, which means it's shielded. And it's shielded encased in such thick material that even if you put an amount of explosive next to it, you need to know exactly how much to be able to penetrate that encasing, that protective casing, and still actually distribute the radioactive material. And quite often, when terror groups have succeeded in gaining access to the material, they've either used too much explosive and completely destroyed it, or they've not used enough, or in some cases, and not been able to penetrate it, or in some cases they've tried to remove the casing itself and then just irradiated themselves and killed themselves instantly. So it is very difficult, but notwithstanding that, of course, it is still a threat. And terrorism, of course, we need to remember, is all about terrorising and about scaring people. And when we talk about dirty bombs, it is something that, people are very concerned about.
And as we've heard in previous cases involving radioactive material, in some cases it can actually be traced. Is it likely that they could possibly trace the material to locate it?
Yeah, I mean, some radioactive sources, depending on their use, have security tracking systems in the actual casing itself. Others, of course, because they have a radioactive signature, depending on the isotope, depends on its shelf life, if you like, which usually, unfortunately, is, hundreds, thousands of years in some cases. But, of course, the amount of radioactivity, its, radioactive strength, if you like, the more radioactive it is, the more likely you are to be able to actually detect it from a distance. So there are ways and means of detecting it, but it depends on the type of radioactive isotope, and it also depends on its half-life. It depends on how old that isotope actually is.
Our guest this hour, former bomb disposal officer Chris Hunter. Chris, many thanks for joining us.